On the morning of 3 January 1923, a policeman who was on patrol around the Front Street area of the Brooklyn neighborhood proceeded on his rounds. He noticed the door of a building at 289 Front Street was opened. He went to investigate. Upon his first observations, he noticed bottles of alcohol all stacked up in what seemed like a brewing operation. Looking closer, he noticed a body on the floor. It was Wild Bill Lovett, appearing to be lying dead. However, Lovett was not dead. He had been shot 3 times in the chest. The policeman blew his whistle to get the attention of other police in the area. Soon the place was swarming with police and an ambulance for Lovett. 3 bullets had lodged in the left side Lovett's chest. All of them missed the heart. Much to the doctor's surprise, Bill regained consciousness and began to mend. They were sure he was going to die from his wounds. When he recovered enough for the police to question him as to who shot him, he shook his head saying, "It's give and take in this game. When I get it I take it and say nothing." The most information the police could gather was that Lovett was shot near the corner of Front and Gold Street, a short distance from where he was found. It seemed like Lovett had been caught in a trap that he would have himself set up for one of his enemies, ambushed from the shadows. As was the usual in the neighborhood, no one would speak to the police. Gang members would simply say it was rival gangsters who did the shooting, but the police didn't believe that. They believed the shooters were from inside Lovett's gang. Either way, the shooting went unsolved. Within weeks, Lovett left the hospital, but the inter-gang war between the factions intensified. On the 3rd of May, Tim Quilty, his brother James and around 12 men had been a saloon shortly before 9 o'clock. The group had been in there only a short time when a heated argument began. Several of them moved into a private room in the rear and others followed. The argument became louder, and then there was a series of gunshots and the men scurried out of the saloon by all doors. The saloon keeper said that when he entered the back room he found Timothy Quilty on the floor. 1 bullet had lodged in the back of his head and 2 in the left of his chest. His brother James Quilty was sitting motionless in a chair. James, who had been stabbed in the head, was revived and questioned by detectives, but seemed unable to give any coherent account of what had taken place. A gun was found in his coat pocket, which led to his arrest on a charge of violation of the Sullivan Act. The police believe that the weapon was placed in Quilty's pocket by the murderer before he left the saloon. Everyone in the saloon never heard the shot or seen the killer, just a shrug of the shoulders. Bill Lovett and Walter Biggins were both arrested in connection with the Quilty shooting, but they were released without charge due to lack of evidence. It is believed that Tim Quilty was one of the alleged gunmen who had shot Bill Lovett the previous January. The tensions between the factions boiled for the next few weeks until the 20th of May, when Frank Healy was shot dead. Frank Healy belonged to the Lovett faction. Frank Healy was gunned down as he was on his way to work that morning. Police believe that he was murdered by Frank Burns in revenge for the Quilty murder. Frank Burns is believed to have taken over the leadership of the Warren Street Red Onion Gang, or the Meehan faction of the gang from Gary Berry, who in turn had taken over from Dinny Meehan. Frank Burns was described by police as the toughest man that wore shoe leather and Bill Lovett's mortal enemy. Burns had been an infantryman in World War I and had received an honorable discharge. Eddie Hughes was the next murder in the gang warfare, and believed to have been one of the men involved with the shooting of Bill Lovett the previous January. There was some confusion related to Eddie Hughes. He had been taken to hospital and given his name as James Martin before he died. Hughes' younger brother identified his body when the record was corrected. James Martin, however, would be killed a couple of days later. It's said that James Martin and Frank Burns were on their way to the Brownie Club, a speakeasy on Nassau Street that was also a headquarters for Lovett's faction of the gang. As Burns and Martin were walking, shots rang out. Frank Burns ducked for cover, however James Martin tried to run but was shot and killed. In a 6-week period there were 9 murders in Brooklyn, 5 of which were gang-related, 3 of them related to the White Hand Gang. There was also a brutal murder of an 8-year-old girl. However, that murder was not in relation to the gang feuds. The newspapers demanded something be done, which pressured the police to crack down on the gang war. The police raided the Brownie Club. Inside were roughly 15 men in various stages of drunkenness, among them Bill Lovett, who tried to escape out the back door but stopped when a cop pulled his gun on him. Frank Burns, Bill Lovett, Peg Leg Lonergan and others were all arrested and brought to the station. Frank Burns and his men were kept in the women's cells upstairs, while Lovett and his men were kept in the cells on the floor below. Frank Burns reportedly told police that he wanted just one favor, to be locked in the same cell as Lovett and Lonergan. The police denied Burns' request. All of the prisoners were subject to severe questioning, better known as the third degree, but none would talk. Frank Burns would only talk to his two sisters who came to visit him. When all the men appeared in court, they were all released due to lack of evidence. The newspapers reported that men looked in a battered state, with discolored eyes, and Bill Lovett had a bandage on his head where his hair parts. The police would keep the pressure on Lovett and his gang. They would keep a presence outside of the Brownie Club on Nassau Street and raid it regularly. Captain Thomas Malarkey and Captain John Sullivan of the detective squad would usually barge into the club with 6 of their men and put everyone in the club up against a wall for searching and questioning. Captain Malarkey reportedly told the gang that they would be better to move from the club on their own free will or else he would move them. While Detective Brosnan told the friends of Bill Lovett that it would be well for them to get out of the precinct, as far away as possible. A truck pulled up to the Brownie Club and moved anything that could be fit into it. Bill Lovett showed up in a car driven by Tom Montague, who Bill was suspected of shooting at one time. Tom Montague was now the president of the Brownie Club. Police didn't have any idea where the new club was to be established. One night while Bill and a few others were in a restaurant, police entered the restaurant and they noticed that Lovett had thrown something away as they walked in. Officers grabbed Lovett while another searched for what was thrown. It was a revolver. They arrested Lovett on violation of the Sullivan Act, the first solid bit of evidence they could pin on Lovett since 1912, 11 years previously. A grand jury brought an indictment. Lovett professed that he was being framed, but the police equally pled their case that Lovett had thrown the gun. The jury was divided and resulted in Bill Lovett being released on a $5,000 bond. Richard Pegleg Lonergan, Lovett's lieutenant, arrived with the money and Bill Lovett was free again. It was during this time that Bill Lovett had met Anna Lonergan, Pegleg's sister. Upon his release from jail on the gun charge, they decided to get married. Bill had told Anna, "I'm washed upon the whole business now, let's get married." Later that day they were on the way to the Marriage License Bureau at the City Hall and were married then and there. Bill Lovett had said, "Now, if there are any more murders in the next 2 weeks they ain't mine. I'm honeymooning at Long Beach." It was during the honeymoon that Anna had convinced Bill Lovett that being a gangster wasn't all that it was cut out to be. She had convinced him that a house in New Jersey and a job to go with it were the right way to do things. Bill Lovett held true to his word. He did make a genuine attempt to go straight. He got a legitimate job and kept out of trouble. In Bill's absence, the leadership of the gang fell to his now brother-in-law, Richard Pegleg Lonergan. In August of 1923, police raided a cottage in Coney Island. The occupants of the cottage were said to be making a lot of noise, disturbing the neighbors. Inside the cottage was Pegleg Lonergan, his brother William and about 12 other people. They were all arrested and charged with disorderly conduct. So many people showed up at the courthouse that reserves from the police had to be called in to ensure the peace. Pegleg Lonergan was given a 3-month sentence, while 5 of his men were given 30-day sentences in the workhouse. William Lonergan and Pegleg's girlfriend were given 30-day suspended sentences. However, in September both Bill Lovett and Pegleg Lonergan were both linked to an assault and robbery of James McLean. This turned out to be not true, as Lonergan had been in jail and Lovett had gone straight. Anna Lonergan had convinced Bill to leave Brooklyn for New Jersey. By all accounts Bill stayed true to his word, but soon enough he got the urge to go back to his old ways. In October Bill Lovett had told Anna that he had to go to New York for business, important business. He promised he would just to Manhattan and back. He said he would stay away from Brooklyn. 2 days later, Wild Bill Lovett's dead body was found at 25 Bridge Street. Apparently Bill had found his way back to Brooklyn and went to the Lotus Club in 25 Bridge Street for a glass of beer and to catch up with old friends. Bill continued drinking until he reached a state of drunkenness. He was with his friend, Joe Flynn, who carried Bill into a room in the back of 25 Bridge Street. Flynn hung around long enough to finish a bottle of whiskey and then left. It was after that time the murderer or murderers found Bill asleep in the room and shot him twice and then smashed his head with a blunt object, believed to be a metal pipe, shattering his skull and the fragments of skull lodging into his brain. Joe Flynn was brought in for questioning as he was the last person to see Bill Lovett alive. He was free soon enough as police believed he had nothing to do with the murder. The popular theory is that the Italians had killed Bill Lovett. However, police believed that the murderer was from within the White Hand Gang and rounded up about a dozen men, including Owen Carney, Robert Kelly and Matty Martin. Frank Burns was the prime suspect, although he was in jail at the time on a gun charge. Another suspect was Matty Martin. Matty Martin would marry Anna Lonergan a few months later. Martin was at Anna's side during Bill's funeral and was there to help her to her feet when she fainted at Bill's funeral. Bill Lovett's death remains officially unsolved. Because the Catholic Church refused to bury gangsters in consecrated ground, Bill Lovett was given a full military funeral and his former comrades from the 13th Machine Gun Battalion, Company C, fired a salute of his grave. Richard "Pegleg" Lonergan, Lovett's brother-in-law, assumed control of the gang until his murder in 1926.